You good, Maverick? Go here. Welcome to podcast episode number 140. Are you overthinking and underacting? That's a common thing. Looking back at a bunch of the mistakes I made over the years, and there's been many. One of the big ones has been overthinking and underacting. Basically, kind of getting trapped in paralysis by analysis, as they call it. So yeah, overthinking and underacting. Of course, thinking is important. So there's kind of a balance to it, I think. Ty Lopez used to talk about KSE, knowledge, strategy, execution. So if you have knowledge and you're kind of thinking your way to, or maybe mastermind and getting advice for the right strategy. So you have knowledge, strategy, but you need also to you also need to have execution. I guess that can be a helpful framework. But yeah, of course there is some kind of balance to it. Henry Ford. No, it was not Henry Ford. It was actually John D. Rockefeller, I think, that said that he who works all day has no time to make money. So that's one from John D. Rockefeller. I think it was he that said that. And he also had some advice for. I remember a story from the biography of John D. Rockefeller. Now there's a lot of negative things to be said about John D. Rockefeller. There's a lot of sketchy things going on there. But when it comes to business, he was a professional. And there was one new guy that was working for his company, and he was helping him with something. And then he was kind of asking him, like, by the way, have anyone told you what one of your most important jobs is at this company? Rockefeller was asking this young guy, and he was kind of answering like, no, I don't think so. And he basically told him that once you have done your tasks, one of the most important things you can do is to sit in your chair, lean yourself backwards, put your feet up on the desk, and think, how can I make more money for this company? So basically, thinking was a part of his job. And I think it was Henry Ford that said, thinking is the hardest job there is. That's why so few people engage in it. I might be butchering that quote, but yeah. So of course, thinking is important. Just hustling like crazy with no thought behind it, that can be very unproductive as well. But yeah, there's also something called overthinking, where we should be taking action. So are you overthinking and underacting? Gary Halbert, the famous copywriter, a lot of people called him the greatest copywriter who ever lived. And he had this concept that he called that, I'm not exactly sure how the quote was, but movement beats meditation. And he said something like, more answers will be found through movement than will ever be found through meditation. So he was basically talking about taking action and getting things done and testing things. Oftentimes, if you get stuck in overthinking something, you might be making a lot of specific plans on things that will not work. Whereas if you had just tested it early on, you might have found out that it was not working and what you were thinking about would never work. So you should just get on to the next thing. Then you can be thinking about the right problems to solve as well. That's a big one. If you're going to fail, you should fail as fast as possible, that you have more time and resources left over to try something else and succeed. You know, Tai Lopez has this quote: "He or she who experiments the most wins." There's probably a lot of truth to that, you know. So yeah, maybe it's time to take action, and imperfect action almost always beats perfect inaction, so-called perfect inaction, you know. There's a lot of people in the world being basically outperformed by a less talented, less skilled, less experienced people because they are taking action. You know, for things to happen, you should do something. For things to change, you should change. You know, if you that's kind of self-evident, but if you don't do anything, what do you expect to happen? If you try, at least you can. If you try, at least you have a chance of succeeding. And if you don't succeed, you can find out what doesn't work and gain some experience and skills and kind of set yourself up for succeeding on the next thing. Like I like I've said many times, I'm not an expert on these things. This is just one of many pieces of advice I wish I got earlier on. You know. And by the way, are you overthinking and underacting when it comes to launching businesses online, making money online, things like that? There's a lot of different ways to do it, a lot of ways that works. But what usually happens oftentimes is that people, they kind of start planning it, and then the time just flies by and they're planning it, but not actually launching, not executing. So there can go like months or years from people got the idea until they actually launch. But one kind of niche or industry that I see people launching quickly, that actually seem to be a kind of trend almost, where people get the idea and they launch early and start getting clients and results and income, is paid communities. The last few weeks I've been interviewing several real life success stories of people that are making at least $10,000 in profit per month from a paid community. And several of these people, from they launched, they got the idea for their paid community, and when they launched it, you know, one of the guys I interviewed, he got the idea for a paid community one day. The very next day, he launched it. And for several of these people, from they launched until they got to about $10,000 in profit per month, it took them like 2 to 3 months for several of them. Of course, there's absolutely no guarantee for you doing the same, but you know, what one man can do, another man can do. And those are just some examples. I've seen other examples online of people doing it in less than 1 month as well. Yeah. And the great thing about paid communities is that a lot of people are kind of launching them very early on. They're kind of launching them as yeah, as what should I call it? A kind of light version. They're oftentimes launching their paid community with a lower price for the first few members, and then gradually, as they're getting more members, they're increasing the price. And a lot of people seem to be really successful doing it that way. And several of the people I interviewed, they were also starting with a lower price and gradually increasing it. So yeah, imagine that. If you have an idea for a paid community, you could basically be launching it in like a few hours from now or a few days from now. And, you know, you might be successful. Imagine making like $10,000 in profit per month. That's 5 figures in profit. But imagine like making multiple 5 figures in profit, like maybe 30, 40, 50, $60,000 in profit per month. I'm not saying it's easy like that, but it's possible. And the thing is, if you're launching a paid community, if you find a great idea for a paid community and you're launching it, once you have a few members, yeah, now you have a few members and a little bit of money coming in, and you can gradually grow it and increase how many members you have and your monthly income. So even if you don't hit it out of the park immediately, at least you are building it, you know. That's the great thing about a subscription business. A paid community is not the only version of that, but it's a great version if you do it correctly. And the great thing, yeah, about subscription businesses is that let's say if you're making like 50 sales one month, the next month, if you're making 50 sales more, now you have like 100 members. Or maybe a few of them were canceling their memberships, but still, you're not starting at zero, you know? So if you have a low churn rate, meaning people will not churn, they will stay a member for a long time once they become a member. That's also something you can optimize around and improve, you know? And if you are only making like 10 sales per month, well, after a few months, you might be at 50, 60 sales. And you might improve your skills and outreach and marketing and generating more sales per month. What my point is, you're not starting at zero every month. If you're selling like t-shirts online, yeah, if you sell t-shirts for $1,000 and it's like $200 in profit one month, yeah, the next month, if you're going to make the same, you kind of have to start from almost zero again and make the same amount of sales to make the same amount of money. But when it comes to a paid community or a subscription business, you don't have to make the same amount of sales. You just have to have the same amount of members. So if you have a low churn rate, people are staying a member for a long time. Now, if you make the same amount of sales every month and you keep people as a paying member for a long time, you might be growing like crazy, you know. And with a paid community, there's also usually a very high profit margin as well. You don't have to pay for physical products and things like that, you know. Anyway, if you want to learn more about paid communities and you want to learn from those real life success stories that I've interviewed, you can check it out on communitycashcows.com. All right, take care and God bless.